discussion and Q&A.
All right, what's up, guys? We're back here with the Q&A
here as well as
with
you guys
ZiggyD.
inspired already just watching things.
ZiggyD Gaming.
You're already cooking a new ascendancy class.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to do design whenever you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's been a few fun moments here already, but I'm your host ZiggyD, and I'm joined by Jonathan and Mark to talk about everything you've seen. Honestly, it's so much.
I mean, we were really keen to make sure that when we went into early access that people didn't feel like it was just, limping along and kind of, just like a minimum amount of content. We really wanted to kind of blow people away. So hopefully people feel like,
my mind is honestly blown
because it was
at the amount of in-game
certainly a
content.
mission to get all that stuff.
Definitely a good choice to focus on that.
I come here expecting that there would be, maybe a basic mapping placeholder end game and your 3 acts and, the half the classes, but... You've made a decision here, clearly, that's got the core PoE player community in mind.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we have to make sure, look, Path of Exile's in-game is kind of known for the fact that you get to choose between different types of content and that, some people enjoy one thing, some people enjoy another, and I feel like that choice is, a huge part of what makes it good. So if we didn't have that when we entered in-game, then I don't think that would be, that wouldn't be a Path of Exile in-game. So that's kind of what we have to make sure of. So we kind of said, okay, well, what is the minimum number of different in-game things you need to be able to have in order to be able to actually have a viable in-game that you feel like you get different choices, and that's how we ended up with what we have here.
I definitely feel like a lot of games nowadays release, and their campaign's intact and real good. You get to the end game and it just falls real flat.
Yeah.
And
Diablo
it was
4.
certainly a very important moment for us when we were like, hold on, that's the wrong thing to do. Let's not make the same mistake.
I just made the connection. They said 12 months ago they shifted to focusing on the end game.
A world of difference.
That's basically like the Diablo 4
times bigger with
release time.
Right?
It was definitely hard though.
It came out. Campaign was good. The end game sucked.
We're progressing. It's like we would have made it. We would have
Very negative reactions, not received well.
If we hadn't have changed direction, it's like to actually say, you know what, we're going to specifically not finish this content that we'll be working on, that we it's like pins down everyone. We're stopping work on this. We're going to move over to end game because it's actually more important. That was certainly a hard one.
That would have been some whiplash there, I imagine.
For sure. Well, I mean, it's like suddenly the whole, environment art team, it's like, they're all just like, whatever you're working on, just scrap. You don't want to scrap. Just stop it. we're doing something else now. So
saving clothes, yeah.
Especially for a lot of the developers, because you got to also think, a lot of our developers have just been working on this campaign for, what is it now, 6 years.
I think it's even longer, actually.
Yeah, it's like just this epic journey, whereas none of them, a lot of these people haven't been working on Path of Exile 1 this whole time, so some of us are like, we're just churning out in-game with every league and doing all of that, but for a lot of these people, a lot of these developers, it was quite jarring to swap over, but everyone embraced it. We talked about it, everyone was happy about it and stoked about it, and it just ended up coming out real awesome. So
I think it's landed well, and it definitely kind of blew me away when so even before I saw anything, we were in the car on the drive here, and you were just info dumping all of the end game. You're like, oh, we got this feature, we got this feature. I'm getting dopamine just from hearing about it. I haven't even seen anything yet. But do you guys feel like you're competing against yourselves a little bit here? Because Path of Exile's kind of set the bar. The original game has set the bar for what is available to endgame in a game like this, and it makes it's not acceptable really to launch with just nothing in terms of endgame now.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, if you're not competing with yourself, then I don't think you're going to make good progress, right? So that's what you really have to do.
Yeah, but cracking that out for beta even.
Yep, absolutely.
Pretty
well,
exciting.
as I said, I just think it would not have landed nearly as well without that. And I think it's important that our existing Path of Exile 1 community feels like they're also served. Yeah, sure, we're doing all this stuff for new players, and that's really important, and that'll expand the audience. But, if we launched and all the PoE 1 players are unhappy, that wouldn't be good. So, we have to make sure that they also feel like, they've got a game for both them and for all the new players we hope to bring to the genre.
And you definitely want all those different axes as well. Just having 2, right? You'll get a lot of content can be immediately divisive, right? Obviously, that's the nature of it. That's how it goes, right? And so you have all of these different avenues because there are different players who like different types of content.
Yeah.
So if you're just like, here's your one end game system, well, immediately then there is a portion of players who are just like, I don't want this, right? And so having all of these options is like ultra key, and that is what Path of Exile 1 has taught us. And again, it's like, I'd say lessons learned, for the genre, and it is expanding in other games and stuff, but certainly, as you said, competing with ourselves, yes, PoE 1 has like, 40 axes, and we've got 7 really good ones here, and obviously more to come. But 7 is a lot, mind you.
Especially when it's all like, people have to learn a lot of things again. It's going to be very interesting to see how long it takes people to do the kind of difficulty 4 pinnacle content. It's like we have we have to. It's honestly like we actually don't even really know, because like you never know what people are going to find in terms of builds and so on. Like I'm hoping that it will take people a while to be able to work it out, but you never know. Maybe end of day 1, people just be like, oh yeah, easy, no problem, mate. Could be what it's like.
We have a few people that are doing that sort of thing. I saw like a solo self-found level 100 in 24 hours or something.
Jeez. Okay, this is where we've got it now, is it?
So, but I imagine there'll be a little bit of a soft reset there for people.
Yeah, for sure.
A relearning period.
There's stuff to learn.
And I mean, PoE 2 has changed a lot over the years, so more than 5 years of development now. And what was that initial pitch when PoE 2 was first put forwards, like, as to what it's going to be? Because it was much smaller in scope originally.
Yeah, so when we started, it wasn't even a sequel. It was just, we're just updating the character rigs. And over time, it kind of feature creeped into a proper sequel. But the thing that we were saying is, whenever we were talking about it, and I guess this is the main thing, is that we're like, okay, when we make an area here, it needs to be that there's like a theme for it. It feels unique from everything else. We're not going to just like have recycled stuff like within the campaign that just feels like, oh, we just took this area and modified it slightly. Each one's got to have its own stuff. It's got to have monsters that were like carefully thought about, that like, fit in with the world. And it's got to have bosses that are actually like good tier quality, and every area is going to have one. So those decisions have kind of been things that have meant that they really raised the quality bar to a level that took us way longer than we even really expected. Like those things there, just like it's huge, right? Like honestly, I feel like we underestimated significantly what it would take to deliver that level of quality.
I remember really early on, a battle I fought for, and I mean like way back, was like, if you think back to, say, Diablo 2, which obviously still holds a lot of, power in terms of design motivations and philosophy and stuff within the company, you get things like the super uniques, and PoE 1 did them, and it's just like, here's a boss with 1 or 2 skills. And I remember very, very, very early on in PoE 2, I'm like, I want every single boss to be memorable and a thing. I don't want a unique monster that's just like dies in 2 seconds and uses heavy strike and has a fancy name. And I remember, I even got some push.
Poor Caliph.
I remember getting some pushback at the time and thinking like, I love the bosses, my favorite part of everything. And so I was just like, man, I don't want this. This is just terrible. But of course, that decision, me pushing for that, me wanting that, turned into this megalithic.
What have you done?
Now we have 50, aiming to be 100. Honestly, probably later, several more 100 once all the end games, everything start to evolve and more expansions comes out. And I'm like, we maybe just made 100 times more work for ourselves, but 100% bloody worthwhile, because I'd say those bosses are one of the main attraction pieces of the game, and anyone who plays it is just like, holy crap, those boss fights are amazing. So like, obviously some are bad and some are good to different people and all that. That's how it all goes. That's part of all the fun. But it is true that me pushing for that thing literally created thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of work. Now, worthwhile work, but it is again that exact thing of like, the scope was kind of small on numerous axes, and as we just raised the quality bar to what we thought was good, it certainly went from, what was it initially, just reskinning some character classes and new rigs or whatever, into this like mega scale entire campaign, everything. But
full standalone separate game. Yeah.
Fun other anecdote, since we went out of that territory. It was originally codenamed Project Chimera.
What? I don't.
It was this pipe dream.
I've never been a fan of these codename things.
It was this like, there were times way back in the original Office, there was all this like, sometimes there'll be a feature you can't really do in PoE 1, and it was always like, we'll do it in Project Chimera. That was like amongst the developers, and people were like, what the heck is that? Now, ironically, there is a boss in Act 3 called, well, it's got a different name, but it's called the Chimera internally. It is a chimera. It's a multi-headed beast, and you've seen it in a few of the marketing, things here and here, different trailers, little snippets of it. And I think it's just ironic that was actually the first boss asset made before everything, the first monster, because back in when we used to just make random monsters and we'll find out how to use them. And that was made for that game. It was used in the original PoE 2 trailer, right? It is the only incomplete, technically, but only from a balance standpoint, or it was the last boss to finish in the entire Path of Exile 2 campaign right now.
It sounds like there was like some sort of emotional demon that you had to battle there, of like the legacy of the original idea, and you had to finish it.
We had a moment with the monster game designers where we're like, oh my god, it's happening, the Chimera is finally being finished. Holy, this is like, yeah, we were effectively like, we need to celebrate this boss finally being done. It was like at the origin, and now it's at this, point where we're about to deploy early access. Not to say the end, because the end is forever away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still the beginning of a journey in many ways.
Yep.
But on that note of celebrating, like, how do you guys feel having now kind of, for the first time, I feel really like laid bare kind of everything you have. You're putting it out there, and only being 2 weeks away from everyone playing it.
Well, it's always scary, coming into a release, and I think especially for, there's like a bunch of people on the PoE2 team who have, who are, like they have, this is their first game that they're going to be releasing, and that experience is something that, it's tough. And honestly, I think that even we were feeling a little bit cocky actually about the fact, because we release content for PoE1 all the time, and I feel like we kind of felt like we knew what it took to get a game released. But honestly, like PoE2 was just a whole entirely different demon as far as getting things out right. Like, it's just way more difficult. Like, when you actually have to make everything, like the whole frickin' thing right from the ground up again, it's like, wow, there's way more stuff there. And like, there's even things like the passive tree, where it's like, I feel like we underestimated what it would take to get something like that to an actual releasable state. Like, that was a huge amount of work, just like absolutely colossal to get it to get that kind of stuff in shape. Like, it's just been crazy. Obviously it's nerve-wracking, coming up to a release day, but I think we do have something that players are going to really enjoy. And it's always comforting when we had a live event in LA recently. People, we got to the time limit and everyone's like, oh man, we don't want to stop. So like I think people are going to really enjoy it.
It's been a whole different experience for me here playing this time around as well, whereas before I was playing a very buggy kind of internal version of the game that was very experimental. Now playing almost what I'm going to be playing in
Well, I
2
heard
weeks,
you
so.
still managed to blow the count up the elevator with some kind of knockback bug.
I wasn't going to mention that.
Yeah, we have to just go with that one.
I did send the Act 1 boss up an elevator with knockback. It was good.
Intended mechanic.
I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
He was in his like big wolf form and kind of trapped in there, so just barking at me through the wood. It's good. So a few little, I'm sure there's a few things to work out over this next 2 weeks. I hope the team can have a little bit of a rest for a day before they get back into it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a lot. So you've done that pivot to the end game focus and got so much for us now to play around with in the beta. And it seems like originally I was thinking, we might be playing for a few weeks here, and then maybe going back over to some Path of Exile 1 stuff. But it seems like you guys want us playing through Christmas.
That would certainly be good. Look, there's enough stuff there. I think it will take people a long time to get through.
Yep.
And obviously, it's also going to be the first time people are playing through a completely fresh campaign as well. I think that will take people a fair amount of time. There's, and then of course the end game as well to explore. It should be pretty significant. We've always wanted it to be that Path of Exile 2 leagues, are going to be, like how PoE1 leagues are, where you play them for a reasonable amount of time, and then sure, you get done with them eventually, and then you've got the next content that comes out. So in order to be able to realize that, you have to have enough of a base to make that happen.
Yeah, people are definitely wondering like how invested they can get in the beta. So I definitely want to ask a few questions kind of around that idea. Firstly, is there going to be wipes and resets, and will there be something before launch as well?
So we are going to be having new leagues effectively throughout the beta whenever we launch something significant, because we want to make sure that all of the effectively that people are able to play through. But that stuff will be merged into an early access league, and effectively after we go into full release, that league will stick around. Now, I can't promise that everything about your character will function exactly like how it did in that thing.
I imagine it'll be a glorious kind of snapshot of all of the here's all the broken stuff. Yeah.
But effectively, we can contain all that stuff in the sort of early access league, and then if you still want to play those characters, then you can go right ahead and do that. But the action is always going to be in whatever the most recent league is, and then of course after that point there'll be a standard that everything goes into, which all our economic sins will forevermore be archived in the in standard. So that's. No doubt what will happen.
Well, it's nice that it's not going to be affecting what will be the standard league.
Yeah.
Also,
that's the idea.
People will be able to kind of get invested in their characters. Because,
absolutely.
There's even something kind of cool about the idea of making something that will be like that little historical piece.
absolutely.
A little collectible.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there'll be some handful of legacy things that only exist in early access leagues. So I guess we'll have to see what comes with the unique balance.
You talked about like the playing for a week or how long are we expecting.
Yeah.
Well, we also got to remember, and a lot of the PoE1 players will be thinking very differently to people who are obviously going to experience this as a new game, but it is a new game, right? You don't have all these predefined, hyper-refined builds to play to immediately, go through things. You don't have people coming in with like fully detailed 7 million
That's
line
really the
build
thing
guides
I'm
of
most
exactly
looking
what to do
forward
with
to,
what items.
because that's
The
something
discovery
I'm
is going
pretty
to be
good
there.
at,
The
is
discovery
figuring
takes
stuff
time,
out.
and the discovery is like honestly ultra fun for me. I love it.
Yeah.
Now those things will emerge after time, of course they do, completely fine. But you should remember, like, there's a lot of game to play here, to discover, to learn about the world, the new narratives, the new world building, the new unique items, the ascendancy classes, the massive passive tree, which is bigger than PoE1's, the end game systems, the bosses. It's not going to be this I personally, when a PoE1 league comes out, for example, I play for like a month. Sometimes a bit longer, sometimes a bit less. It ultimately also depends largely what's going on here and how much I need to invest here. So, and there are other people who play for more like 3 and whatnot, but there's certainly going to be a much longer time period you can play this for while still discovering new stuff and not feel like you're finished, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, of course, you see that's subjective. Everyone can pick their own point when they finish, but if you want to see everything and do everything, you're going to be investing a lot more time, especially these first-time rounds, and then obviously with every league, there's more to discover, but you get faster at doing all these parts over and over and over again. You'll get more efficient over time. That's how the game works. So, yeah, I'd expect a lot of time to be sunk into this to fully explore it to start with, like a lot, not a week, not 2 weeks. You're going to be going far, far longer than that if you want to see everything. But, it's up to you. Play at your own pace. See how you want to go. Learn at your own pace. That's the beauty of a new game as well, which we haven't been able to experience with Path of Exile 1, or other games and for so long, is actually discovering the entire world. And yeah, there's some familiar mechanics at the end game and stuff like that, which is awesome for people. But I certainly want to I'm very excited to see people discovering the new things and getting so excited about it.
I can tell you're amped for watching people go through that discovery process. I'm maybe even diving in yourself
100%.
I love sitting there in Path of Building, as many of us do, but I am very excited for that.
As we were
new
saying,
discovery process for a while.
I think you were saying how much you were part spreadsheet. I think I was saying I'm like maybe 60% spreadsheet, 40% discovery, and that's my play archetype. So
coming up with our player profiles, Timmy spikes, and things like that for both of Exile characters.
The discovery part of me is ultra excited, and I'll mind you, that's coming from someone who kind of knows all the content. I'm still, because there's something different about making it versus actually playing it live with the players, seeing them discover it, uniques being linked in chat and on Reddit and all of that is just so cool. So we're gonna get a massive dose of that, and it is like genuinely exciting to just see how people are gonna think. What's worth 1 chaos or what's worth 10 chaos, what's worth if chaos is even the metric.
Is chaos even the currency that people settle on?
We were arguing about this earlier.
I'm pretty sure that 1 C spam in chat might turn into 1 E, because 1 exalt. Given that exalt is now,
I think it'll be chaos.
People
ad remove will still be.
People don't appreciate, by the way. So when we say we've increased them, you're going to be getting multiple exalts in Act 1. In PoE 2, we actually have increased that a lot. It isn't just like an idle,
I can see exalts becoming the new kind of like chaos. And
I think
chaos
that will
being
be
the new divines.
I actually agree. But we'll see.
That's my point.
But it's a new economy, right? Who even knows?
Yeah.
The market will have to.
But I like that we're already arguing about this. It's good fun. So, do you have some kind of beta release roadmap for updates and things like that for people to look forward to?
I mean, we certainly did have one 6 months ago when we were, but now that we're sort of getting to release, it's like, oh my god, we have to look at it. So, I mean, look, I don't think it'll be any less than 6 months, and I think it could easily end up being more. I certainly don't want to. I mean, look, 2025, I think. Really want to be full release in 2025. I don't really want to be spending more than a year that would be pretty crazy. But I mean, honestly, like we have to get all the content finished and all that sort of stuff. We always feel like we underestimate these things, and of course we have to learn what we need to learn. We have to get the game to the point when it is really fun. We have to make sure that like all of the things, like we've got the difficulty right for all the players, we've got the economy right, like all the stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're gonna have to sort out. And so I kind of have a feeling that the first few weeks at least are gonna just be a scramble of like, oh crap, someone like worked this crazy thing out and we found this thing, and like that's always scary, because it's just when we add content to PoE1, it's like at least the kind of base of stuff that we have is kind of well tested and people know kind of what's going on with it. But here it's like just complete new world, and we're the kind of game that has a lot of ability for players to do stuff that we wouldn't anticipate. We have just the way support gyms work and everything like that. So there's certainly a lot of worry that like there's just going to be builds that are like completely ridiculous that we just never anticipated, with combining certain things in different ways we don't expect. With hundreds of support gems, it can be like that. So that's going to be an interesting one.
It will happen.
Yeah, for sure.
It is inevitable, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's nothing we can even do about it, because you need hundreds and thousands of hours of testing to be able to do that with what can only be done with hundreds of thousands of players. But that's also the magic of it all, which is awesome.
That's why I was asking you, like, are you literally really doing 12 classes and 36 sentencies, like actually?
Yeah, that's absolutely. We have we know what we want to do with
It's a
all
bit
that
unhinged.
stuff. It is a bit, but we like a challenge. I mean, a studio that produces a passive skill tree like we do clearly has a bit of a glutton for punishment with regard to just like mixing.
You totally could have done 6 and then like, I don't know, added more later in an expansion or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could have. I mean, look, this is the plan. This is the plan. I mean, like as people go through early access, it's going to feel like there's just expansion content coming up pretty frequently. Just because we have all the stuff that we kind of
Exciting.
got a lot of the way through. So yeah, there's stuff to come. I mean, look, I'm pretty sure. Like, I really want to get the Druid out. Like we announced it, we've talked about it. It's a lot of fun. I'm keen to get that out there as soon as we can. The Huntress we've talked a bunch about as well. There's like those kinds of things. I think we'll be able to move towards those pretty quick. There's obviously more to do.
The other thing you mentioned, talking roadmap like things, is we've always been. It's hard to predict because a lot of what will happen and what we leave space for is reacting to what the players want. And so if you plan everything for so long, you're going to have very, very, very slow reaction times to fixing, or adding certain content where maybe the issue is like, the campaign needs more of this, or this class needs more of this or something. So if you're planning, then you're going to be delivering on what they want solved like a year down the line or even longer.
Right,
and where we like to remain very, very dynamic and like, you want to be able to fix that stuff like, this is the main problem. Like, sure, obviously you need more than a week sometimes, most of the time. But we want it generally to be that the next releases, expansions, updates, whatever, can alleviate as many of those problems as possible. So, yeah, you try not to get too strict with the
That's
planning.
really
is
good to
generally been
hear.
our philosophy, because especially when it comes to actually having the live service product out, because that is very, very important. Otherwise, you're never going to seem like you're doing what people want. And what are you doing if not that?
So that actually is a good point. Like, I was going to ask, what do you folks, what does the team want out of the beta? Because obviously it's like a good way to market the game, but it's also, key to shaping the game in the future. Like, an actual beta. It's not just early access.
I think one of the most important things, I think it's going to be really good for the development team to get back into a live mindset and like get it back into the idea of like, okay, everything we make is shipping.
People are
soon,
seeing this.
Like get back into this. People are seeing, like actually getting back into that and being able to sort of see directly, like, okay, we make something, it goes in the game, people like it, don't like it, like that kind of stuff. Like, and that really, like, that has been our studio for like most of its lifetime. Obviously, before we released PoE1, it wasn't, but after that point, I mean, we are a company. We are a company that likes to think that we can do live service better than anyone else. Like, that is our goal. And so, like, getting back into that again, for everyone in the studio, so that everyone's working on things that are going to be releasing within, certainly in less time than 3 months away. Is going to think be really, really good for us again. I look forward to just being able to do that, because these long term, like really long term things, like that span over years. It's like you go so long without proper feedback, like stuff kind of gets made, and then it's not really in a real game, and so it doesn't get
probably
tested
lose
properly.
perspective,
And you absolutely lose perspective on this stuff. So I think that that's just going to be a really great to get back to that again.
Yeah. I honestly, as you said, it is early access, it is a beta period, and I'd say, personally speaking, the thing that, and we mentioned it briefly about the character balance and the builds that are broken and all that, that's obviously pretty useful to me, right?
Yep.
Plus, we have other systems in there, like, the checkpointing system, right? You have to kill the boss in one life. These are things we haven't mass tested, and obviously other games have, and they work, and that's awesome. There are other things like, the end game system is a little bit less forgiving in that if you die, you fail the map, right? These things are things that we obviously need to test and iterate on in the future by adjusting the difficulty and stuff like that. And especially as you get towards this point of, the end game, like, okay, Act 1 has been tested like crazy.
Yep.
Right? And you get less and less testing as it goes on because you get less people, they've just been around for less time. And so, yeah, it's going to be a huge amount of iteration and feedback and from the players and us just, reevaluating all the stuff. And the thing is, we're always dynamic about that stuff. Like, we'll just change things if it's wrong. We'll redesign it. We'll come up with a new way. Jonathan's a firm believer of if A doesn't work and B doesn't work, then we'll find C, we'll find option C, we'll find option D, and we'll keep changing things and we'll make it work. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of that iteration on our design decisions, how forgiving, because, like, the game is pretty hard. It can be pretty hard. And so when you're on that fine line of, like, if things are difficult, it's not too easy to know if you've tilted one way or the other. So, finding what everyone agrees should be the common corrected difficulty is something that I will obviously be paying very, very, very close attention to.
It's a pretty hard thing to nail down when you are making the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've seen that a lot where you folks have been pretty willing to change and then rechange and rechange again some of the core features like flasks and the waypointing system and portals. And you're keeping that kind of mindset going into the beta then?
Of course. I mean, look, we're always willing to change stuff. Like that flask thing, like the most recent change to that was like ultra recent. Like, have we even had like a closed beta of that yet? Was that? No, I think we haven't. Yeah. I think it's way better than it was. Like it's things have improved a lot. And honestly, like that's one of those things we've been wanting to do, something to sort out flasks for ages.
Yep.
And it really came about because when actually looking at what new players were having trouble with when they were playing, Flask Piano was actually like, even from the very beginning of the game, actually ended up being one of those things that like people just had trouble with, just like just the manual dexterity required to like hit all your different flask keys, and then you have to know when one of your flasks has run out so you can move to the next one, and like various things like that. Like all that stuff actually was like just a large amount of mechanical complexity right from the very beginning. And then even at end game, I don't think it was really that satisfying either, because you ended up with like, just like having to press all these buttons all the time, and obviously it's all utility flasks that people are using at end game. And then we kind of tried to band-aid this in PoE1 with the some of the flask automation stuff that was added there, but there was still this idea that that you're still more powerful if you don't automate. So therefore, it's like there's that trade-off there. So
you're just more powerful if you get mage blood. Really,
sure. I guess. Sure.
And then it's all automated, and you're very powerful.
Yeah, sure, all right. But so the point is, effectively, that the charm stuff that we're doing effectively means that you no longer, the game is making that decision of like, that stuff will be automated. You no longer have to do that like crazy flask piano to get the best, the best out of your character. And I think that is definitely a step in the right direction. And the other thing as well is it actually makes the crafting more meaningful, I think, on the flasks, because when you've got like 5 slots, then like the individual mods and the individual stuff like seems to tend to not matter as much. I mean, obviously, people want instant recovery and things like that, but like but like now it's like it's much more meaningful. Like on your life flask, the choice between do I want instant or do I want way more life, like that kind of stuff actually can be a lot more meaningful once you've only got one. So yeah, I think it is a lot better personally.
You have we'll jump ahead to flasks since we're on the topic. You have locked in effectively the fact that there's a mana flask there now, so there's always going to be a mana flask slot. And how does that tie into your design for mana? And are we always going to be using a mana flask slot, or if we solve another way, what does it do? You
can absolutely solve another way, and then you'll just have a flask slot that isn't doing anything for sure. But I think it kind of has to work that way because we really don't want. Because like once you sort of start to get into changing that around, I feel like the system sort of starts to break with regard to like the feeling of like I know where mana is, I know where my health is, like that kind of stuff. That being said, we've always got uniques and stuff like that. I believe there's already
there is a unique that allows you to equip 2 flasks.
But the thing is, then that's a build choice that you're making, so it's a little bit different, and that's fine. I think the system as it works now it's a lot easier.
Very interesting
So it
changes
does
on
sound
the
like
flasks.
on the mana side of things then that there are going to be multiple angles of solving mana,
Of
not
course.
necessarily
Yeah. So
flask
we've
spam.
got Leech edition number 475 of how it works, and we've finally got it right this time. You know, yeah, I think it works. And I think it's good. So I think that Leech will be more common.
I'm not going to have to like crack out the leech diagram showing the different buckets and things like that.
I was saying, I think that Leech might be. No, I was going to say Leech is one of the topics in the studio that has wasted the most designer time of anything in the history. But I actually don't think it's that. I think the actual worst offender is what stats should Dex give you. I think that is like that one has wasted there's so many arguments about that.
I feel like that one's never come to the fore. Like we know about the leech one,
but no one is happy about giving accuracy. But no one has a better idea than what accuracy that it can give. And then, like everyone's going to come up with like in chat a bit. I bet they'll be like saying, oh, you know, it can give this or this, whatever. But there's like yeah, seriously, there's been endless arguments about that topic. It's outrageous.
Yeah. You've got me thinking about it now.
Yeah.
I mean, speed would be good, but then that's
No,
probably
but
too much.
No,
That's too much.
something like Dex, you just
Yeah,
can't.
Dex
no.
stacking speed.
We can get all the designers down here right now.
Yeah, I know. But we'll just have it. We'll just have it out again. We'll just have it out again.
The longest Q&A of all time.
Yeah.
It's already going to be that.
Sometimes you're just like, you start the day, and you're like, all right, here are the problems we need to solve, and then you're like,
What about?
But then accuracy on Dex comes up again.
No, it's 3 p.m. and we're still discussing dexterity.
Yeah.
So go home. Just make it accuracy again.
Yeah, exactly. That is literally how it comes back to accuracy every time.
This is okay.
Yeah.
Rewinding a little bit, we can't forget our roots with Path of Exile 1, of course. So for the PoE 1 enjoyers, what is the plan for PoE 1 during the course of this beta? Is there going to be leagues launching? Is it on the back burner?
Yeah, there absolutely will be leagues launching. Now, I don't know the exact date, but the plan is kind of late February.
Yep.
But I mean, look, we'll see what happens. I will admit that unfortunately we did have to steal a few PoE 1 resources just towards the end here, which is kind of been a bit unfortunate. I really wish we didn't have to. But yeah, as I said, we kind of underestimated some of the stuff. But everyone is going to be going back to PoE 1 again for the February league. And you know, we're going to make sure that we can do that. Like one of the things that was a big problem for our studio when we had a long-term project and a short-term project is that you know, you've always had that thing of like you always want to work on the short-term thing.
Yeah.
So now that we've got 2 short-term things coming up, I actually think it's going to be a bit easier to prioritize in some respects because
Funnily enough,
you know, it's just like it's all that stuff is then you know, is like coming up soon. So but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we need to get that PoE 1 expansion out next.
Yeah, obviously, you know, I just want to always make it clear that, you know, the reason why things can't be so planned out is, again, we're just releasing this game.
Yep.
Obviously, we pivoted to in-game, and then that needed more resources. And then, of course, combined with the fact that, you know, things obviously change. There are unpredictable things in the environment we can't necessarily guarantee. And then, of course, you have, you know, Christmas coming up and all of that, right? There's so many variables to consider, but we also don't know how much time is going to be invested necessarily or need to be invested into live operations for post-release. How many problems are going to go wrong? How many builds how many of the uniques are broken? How many, you know, and where do all these resources go? There are like just millions of variables here to consider, and so like it can get very, very difficult, especially at this time. But once you release, you have a bit of a grace period, so to speak, where well, more like a period of extreme amounts of fire, where we're putting out fires everywhere. But we have a period where we're fixing everything. You get everything stable, and then we're going to be like, all right, let's recalibrate, figure everything out, and what is our plans, and then establish all of that, based also on the feedback we get from that, you know, period where everything's on fire. Not to make it sound like it's going to be bad, but that is the inevitability. Is there's always problems.
Hopefully, it appears good from a player perspective, but there's always going to be like, oh my god, people found this, and you know, like
we don't have to see all the fires.
Yeah. Like ideally, the best thing is when we're able to fix some kind of exploit before people even hear about it. Yeah. And when I say exploit, I'm just talking about some broken thing. Like if we we're obviously normally have to worry about like the whole mid-league nerf concept, but it's like if you can deal with something within like an hour or 2 of it happening, then it's like you're kind of okay because you know no one had a chance to kind of like everyone didn't swap their build over to it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna have to be really on the ball for PoE 2 just because there's so many things that are new.
Well, I mean, look. We have several bosses with several elevators.
Yeah.
How many of them can be pushed up the elevator? You know what I mean? Well, that's what I mean. When I say a fire, I'm talking about bosses getting pushed up elevators. Like, that's not okay.
I am
Or
liking
maybe it
my
is okay.
mercenary flashbang knockback is very fun.
Right. Yeah, you need to look into that, by the way. The whole flashbang.
I feel like you're gonna nerf my build.
Yeah.
Is this when he's
Stay away
just
from my
finding fires
Grenada.
already?
Yeah.
No. These are the fun things. Discovering that stuff can be very fun for the players. It's just internally, it's like, oh no, what are we doing? It can get a little bit panicky after release, you know, and it you know, there's lots of things going on. You're like, oh geez, what do I solve first? But obviously, you know, it's the same as PoE 1. We're good at it at this point.
Got some
you know,
experience.
yeah.
Indie belts. You aren't going to be torturing us with like releasing beta stuff at the same time as PoE 2 league launch, PoE 1 league launches. Are you?
Yeah, the plan is to keep them separated a bit from each other so that you know, you get a chance to play.
Don't
with
make me
both teams.
choose.
Yeah.
So we saw a cinematic, to put it lightly. It was that was quite epic, and I know has been cooking for quite some time, and that was pretty exciting. But we've also seen just a lot of story stuff happening on a much higher level
Absolutely.
than previously now. So
Yeah,
stepping
so,
up your storytelling game here a bit.
Yeah, so we're really wanting to make sure that the storytelling in PoE 2 is much better than what it was in PoE 1. Like, you know, there's a lot more kind of, I guess, like that kind of like stuff with the introductions to boss fights and the outros and things like that. Like all that stuff, we've just got a lot more storytelling going in. All of those things. We do have the intro cutscene. There's also kind of like light, like between the acts. There's these kind of like more kind of motion graphic type cutscenes, just kind of establish things. And there might be some more surprises later on in the game as well. Not in early access, unfortunately. Later on that we can that you can see as well. But ultimately, we just want to make sure that like I think a lot of people who got through the PoE 1 story had no idea what was happening by the end. And so effectively we want to make sure that is not the case this time around, that people really are able to absorb things. But
Guilty.
one thing I will say, though, is that it's ultra important to us that we don't break the feeling that, like, when you're playing a second time, that it feels like we don't want it to feel annoying the second
Yeah,
time.
we were talking about this morning. About
Yeah,
You
yes.
don't take the control out of the player's
Exactly.
hands.
So yeah, I'm a personally a believer of the fact that if you just when you change the camera position for a cutscene, immediately it feels way more annoying. Like, because there's just this whole thing of like if you click on an NPC and like the camera changes position, like sure, when you're playing through the campaign the first time, that kind of thing is like, you know, like the
100% Diablo 4.
The if you're
I hate those unskippable
like you're playing through the
in-game
second, third,
cutscenes.
fourth, fifth time, you want to be able to go to the NPC and go click, 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 and just get past, and without it feeling like you've had to sort of worry about anything. So yeah, like effectively, we want to make sure that it's still that we still have that, you know, because ultimately, you know, we're a game you expect people to play through many times. So ideally, we can kind of deliver both the situation where the first time you play through it, it feels like an amazing story that you're getting, that you're taking seriously, that you're understanding, that you know, there's like all those sort of touch points and you know, little you know, things just all through, while also maintaining the fact that if you know what you're doing, it's like you don't have to go talk to some quest giver just to get a quest. Like you can just go do the thing, you know, without having to talk to someone about it first. So you know, that kind of stuff is really important, just to make the, you know, that stuff work well when you know what you're doing.
Yeah, you said something this morning that stuck with me, where you said like Path of Exile is a game where the player's meta knowledge is allowed and
Yes,
encouraged.
absolutely. So
You're
yeah,
allowed to cheat those quests
Effectively,
because
yeah.
you
So
know
effectively,
what to do.
there's what the character knows and there's what the player knows, and in our game, what the player knows is needs to be sufficient as far as like being able to progress the storyline. If you don't want to have it so you just talk to an NPC just to find out something you already knew as a player.
Yeah, like
so
if you know you kill this boss, you get the next area's waypoint. So you just like kill it, log out,
Yeah.
log in, waypoint, right?
I love doing that.
Meta knowledge.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you explained to me the other day the kind of the context for the beast and how
Yes.
that leads into the cutscene in the beginning of PoE 2 from PoE 1, and that I think helped put it in a lot more perspective for me and made me appreciate and understand what's going on with the story
So
here more.
effectively, what you're seeing in the opening cutscene is effectively the a new seed of a beast that is going to be is growing. Now in PoE 1, you know, the beast was killed. And then what happened in response to that is a bunch of all the gods in the world were able to, were able to effectively rise again. And you killed a bunch of them, but there are more, you know, in the world. And effectively, we don't want to spoil too much about the storyline overall,
course.
but effectively, obviously, someone here, the Count is wanting to harness the power of the beast once again, and then we have the mysterious figure there who is saying, no, don't do this. This always turns out badly.
There was a comment in chat that I loved that was like, "Stop opening Eldritch boxes."
Yeah, exactly.
Why do people keep doing this?
Yeah.
But I would.
If someone handed you a
unlimited
mysterious orb,
curiosity.
wouldn't you press the
Ooh,
button?
I mean,
There's a puzzle box.
yeah, exactly.
I want to open it. What's inside?
Exactly. Yeah.
yes. I mean, I'm gonna try, but who knows how many hours it's gonna take me.
Indeed.
So we had a fun moment earlier where you were watching it and you were like, "Oh, we really need to rename that passive because he's a Karui and it's
was
a wolf. It's called a wolf.
Great Wolf's Howl. And the
Great
Great
Wolf's
Wolf
Howl.
obviously being
So you went out there and
Ismite history.
You started telling him.
I stomped out of the room. And I was like, we need to rename that notable. He's Karui. And then I was kindly reminded that actually he was
An orphan who...
orphan and was adopted
monster.
by a Ismite and raised. And so, yes, there is a mixture of Karui and Ismite background. And I was like...
It works. You
Oh,
were wrong.
fair enough. I walked back in here all sad and whatever. My bad. It's fine. The name
He
is
looked
good.
so chastised when he came back in. But that just like points to the fact that I feel like you're doing a lot more with the characters here.
For
And
sure.
You even mentioned that ascendancy stuff is going to have an impact
Yeah.
story-wise.
So, like with
That's wild.
We just think a lot about this kind of stuff. So the acolyte of, and I always get this name wrong. The acolyte of is it Chalula? Chayula. I always say this wrong. The acolyte of Chayula, for example. So that we have this sort of storyline with the origins of the monks, where there's like an order of monks who worship a thing they call the Dreamer, and the Dreamer is actually Chayula. So, and they don't know this. So they're effectively worshipping a breach demon. So the acolyte of Chayula is effectively you embracing the fact that I'm worshipping a breach demon. I'm just going to go all the way.
I'm in too deep now.
Yeah, exactly. We're just gonna do it. So there's a lot of thinking like that goes into these things. Like, what is the history of these people? Like, because I think a lot of that stuff inspires interesting mechanics as well. So, for example, on that one, you've got that into the breach skill, which kind of means you're always in a breach all the time. You can see the things going on. Like that stuff is. I think that just there's a lot of cool inspiration there. So coming up with that storyline stuff for that stuff,
There's a couple other little things that I think is cool as well, and hopefully people will notice and pay attention to. So there's one of the bosses that was shown as uses a lot of time or chronomancy, and interestingly, if you are a sorceress and you ascend to chronomancer and you then go to fight that boss, if you, for example, try to use time freeze, the boss is like, that doesn't work on me, and has a dialogue line. And if you cast temporal chains on them, he's like, just puts it back on you. And it's like, And so there's interesting things like that, and it doesn't like change things on a grand scale, right? It doesn't make a certain class not viable or anything like that. But there's just interesting little quirks and quips everywhere. Different bosses have different intro lines depending on what class you're playing. They have different skill lines sometimes depending on what class you're playing.
Yeah, we've got different dialogue all through the campaign for different classes. Like the sorceress is obviously from the Maraketh. When she goes back to the Maraketh, there's kind of a little backstory there about how she was banished originally. So she needs to find a way to she needs to be accepted back into their culture again. Like we've got things like the character we talked about earlier. So the warrior, was an orphan. He was brought up by actually one of the NPCs in Act 1 town. So obviously there's a whole different dialogue there because he's effectively his adopted son. We've got things like that. There's a lot of thought that's gone into, just trying to make it feel like all these character classes have some level of involvement with the world, they didn't just come into existence the moment that you...
There's other little things. So like more on the narrative side, obviously we saw the world map. You have the icons that show different things that are in each act, like all the things you want to explore,
Such a good
find,
idea.
and awesome. But each of them also has a little bit of text on them as well. And like, for example, there's one in one of the first areas in the game that's just like a camp of Iron Count guards. And, we showed it in a trailer when the Ranger class trailer we did, whenever it was, you saw the Ranger kill some of them because they were trying to like hurt a child, and the child was just trying to get some food. And the Ranger just like snipes them with arrows and kills them ruthlessly. And so you read this thing and you're like, you hear whispers of an Iron Count scouting party that was slain by a rogue archer or something like that. So you get these little things where we're like connecting a lot of little dots, and even that you absorb a little bit of interesting little information. You've got other things, for example, when you enter an area, it not only says the name at the top now, it has almost a subtitle text that's giving you a little bit
of history.
And these little things like somehow make the world building feel so much better. And when you approach certain landmark rooms and you walk into them, you'll get a banner at the top as well, which says what it is and gives, again, a little bit of a thing. And all these little micro narrative delivery mechanisms like make you feel way more immersed in the world and way more aware of what's going on and way more connected to your character, way more connected to the bosses, to the NPCs. There's a lot we're doing now that we certainly never did before. We didn't even think of before. But yeah, it's
I like that
awesome.
a lot because, like, as an action RPG gamer, I don't really care too much about plot, but I do want a really cool world to be blowing monsters up in. Basically, that's all I care. I want the characters to be cool, I want the baddies to be cool, and I want, like, the things happening around me that, like, build out a bit of that story without me having to stop killing stuff.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's more of that going on as well, which is great.
There's
well,
tons. There's
the baddies being cool. I mean, that's
I'm
how we
watching you
almost
cook.
designed an ascendancy class in here just before when we were watching that trailer earlier.
Yes. So what you were saying a shadow. You came up with a shadow ascendancy.
Yeah. Internally we had some developers watching the trailer yesterday, getting excited about it, and then I was like, I want to play that. I want to play that character. I want to be that character.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That like kind of Val Thaumaturge type character, and so like
Cool.
all of a sudden it's like, we should make that a class. And then we had another guy like suggest it should be a shadow, and so now I'm like, oh yeah, we're definitely, come on, we have to do a Val Thaumaturge like shadow
sick.
ascendancy. Like that's gonna be cool. And you can do awesome things now. Even I know it's hard to see because you hide it under all the armor, but you can do things like, with our character classes, just due to the upgrades and models, where all of a sudden now the character can have tattoos added to them and stuff like that is completely feasible in the future. And like, I want to do a lot more of that stuff. Like for the there's little things like for the Warbringer, I think was the class name on the warrior. When you take that ancestral totem node, all your totems now have like an extra blue glow to them, kind of like they're enhanced by this ancestral magic. And what we also want to do is add tattoos as well that like glow blue when you're using certain skills and all that. So heaps of little things that again connect all the culture and all that stuff together and make you feel like, it's believable and this is a character as opposed to this is just a mechanic and,
Makes picking an ascendancy more epic. I know that there was a part in the trailer that was like not fully finished where you ascend and it doesn't really do anything, but I know you want it to be like a cool moment where some power goes in you.
Absolutely. We just hadn't finished the VFX yet.
Even the another one, the Blood Mage, when you like play the Blood Mage, and now you get an additive surge on your character whenever you cast spells. You're getting like almost bloodbending kind of vibe going on, and like
drawing it from their veins and sending out a fireball.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's real cool.
Yeah, you can have like the tattoos get tattooed on them as they ascend and things like that. I mean, that just makes taking ascendancy way more cool, which is already, I think, I almost feel like ascendancy is more important than the classes for players kind of like feeling the vibe of what they want to do with their character. Like,
For sure, because the classes are pretty open. You can play whatever skills, whatever weapon. Sure, you're on a passive tree at a start point, but by high level, you kind of go wherever you want to go. Using jewels, especially getting off-class stuff, you can kind of be whatever you want with the base class.
Yeah.
So eventually, the ascendancy is what becomes more of that important identifying feature, because that's what you have actually chosen that makes you distinct, that another different class wouldn't be able to actually have. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you want to make that super, super cool. And on that note, I know I was definitely confused. I know people were definitely confused and a little worried about ascendancy and what's happening with that. And people were like watching the Sekima trial and being like, "Oh, what if I don't like this? Oh, is this another lab again?" But I want you to like lay it out as like simply as possible. Like, how do you ascend?
Yeah, so effectively, in the full game, there's going to be 3 ascendancy trials. For early access, there's 2. And effectively, you can use any of those ascendancy trials to be able to do your ascension.
You choose.
You choose which one. And effectively, if you as you get to higher level keys for those trials, that will unlock more points. Like if you do it at certain level breakpoints, that will allow you to get more points for those classes. So if you want to just play the entire, just only the Trial of the Chaos God with to get all your points, then you can just decide to do that. Just play it at higher and higher levels, and you get more points as you go through. If you want to do a mix, that's fine too. Personally, I think people will want to try out all the different content. I mean, you might think that you, but even within the trials, there's there's choices, right? Like, I know that there's always contention around traps, but because in the because in the Trial of the Sekimas you can choose which rooms you want to go to. If you don't want to deal with traps, you just don't pick those rooms, right? Like,
you don't go to the gauntlet
don't go
rooms.
to the gauntlet rooms. You can just go to other things.
Do
and
the combat ones.
Do the combat ones, and that's fine too. So effectively, it's like you always get to choose like what you're doing there. Like, it's funny because like I know traps are so contentious, but also there are other people who just enjoy that stuff. So we want to have something for all those people too.
There's these like
Path of Exile, divisive content, but lots of choice, and you can choose what to do and what not to do, and then we're embracing that here now, and that is.
I mean,
just
you're clearly leaning into that now. You have, well, I mean, such a competitive advantage in that you have so much content, and even with PoE 2, that's still going to be the case. So you can lean into that, like making content that is spicier but divisive.
For sure.
And now you're like separating trees and having these things be a little able to be focused on a lot more. And you're doing that with the trials, with the ascendancies. So and you can kind of do all of them and drip feed yourself smaller progression if you want.
And there's also stuff that you're going to be getting from those, like specific rewards and everything that might incentivize you to do that. But of course, on the other hand, if you don't want to do that content, we have full open trade, right? You can just trade for the rewards, and that's fine too. So like that's always part of the.
Yes, like the rewards there, for example, like jewels drop throughout the world. But if you want to get more jewels, you go and run Sanctum. Now, if you want to get the radius jewels, it's Sanctum. I can't. Trial of the Sekima.
So just for anyone who isn't a Path of Exile 1 player, this is effectively a sequel to Sanctum League that we did in Path of Exile 1. So it's mechanically very similar, but it's obviously a Marraketh, like a Marraketh trial now, and we've changed a lot of things about it have changed, and like the content is new, but it is effectively the same overall mechanic, in terms of that sort of roguelike mechanic that we have.
And it's the same with the other one. You have Ultimatum and PoE 1 being the theme, and of course now it's redesigned and it's evolved into Trial of Chaos. So a lot of people in chat would have been spamming Ultimatum, and for those who haven't played would probably be like, what? I don't understand.
Effectively the Trial of the Chaos of Chaos is a sequel to Ultimatum. Which is
and we just have to get used to the new names, which is very hard. Anyway, the point being, of course, and Val Orbs drop in the world as well, and if you want a larger dose of Val Orbs and you don't want to trade, feel free to run some ultimatums. Thing is, because they're all item generated keys as well, it's not like you have to do it right then and there. You can trade the keys away. At any point, you can also buy more keys if you want to farm more of that thing. And if you just want to do it later, just stockpile a bunch of them, run them all at your leisure. You know what I mean? It's like you have the freedom. They are itemized, tradable, as a lot in Path of Exile tradition, but
as is everything, right? We do the only thing you can't trade is gold. So we're like the exact opposite of most games, where it's like the gold is freely tradable and the items get locked. We're like the gold is the only thing you can't trade, and every other item is free and open.
And that's because you've made gold be this like way to be like you're playing the game, so you have access to this, and
absolutely,
so you don't want to trade that away.
Effectively,
So. How, on the ascendancies and the trials, how hard do you foresee getting your ascendancy to be while leveling? Do you expect people to fail out and attempt these things multiple times? And what does that look like if you do?
Well, I failed the first time I did this. The trial.
It is important to know that first itemized key is a quest key, and we have special rules around it that if you do fail, you can just repeat it, right?
Yeah, you changed that recently because that was something that I didn't actually realize you'd changed. I guess it was a little bit too harsh to require to get another one.
Yeah, you weren't the only one failing it.
Yeah.
So pretty much you get to reattempt it, and for something like Ultimatum, just to immediately start thinking of exploits. It's like, I can just do 3 of the waves, then intentionally fail, and then repeat them. Well, we've thought of that. Don't worry. You can't. But, the first ones are repeatable. You're not going to be like, what the heck? Now I have to just play to the whims of random generation to ascend like that.
Right.
Yeah. So
it is pretty hard, though. Like, it'll take. I definitely don't think you'll do it on your first attempt.
I did. Not
you
to
did?
brag.
You
Not
did?
to brag.
Wow.
I did.
Wow.
I did pass on. I was clenched though.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, especially that boss fight.
I was watching him do the boss
You
fight.
came by right as I was doing the boss fight.
But you had some like kind of powerful boons there, to be perfectly honest. So.
I got 60% move speed. But that was part of my strategic choice.
I was watching you from. I'm like, how is he so fast?
This isn't the PoE 2 slide.
I was like, what was dodge rolls going across half the arena?
This game's supposed to be slow.
No.
It was good. It was good fun. I quite liked it. I like mostly like Sanctum. I don't want to do it all the time, but I did quite like the Trial of Sekima. But knowing that there's other choices, so I can do Ultimatum instead or something like that is fun.
100%.
So you got these like 2 roguelike dungeons that are going into the beta that launch, but they're done very differently. One's got the honor system, which is like a separate health, but it's based on and scaled by your health, which I noted as quite
And your defenses
interesting.
now, it can be
And your
fully
defenses.
mitigated and
Yeah,
everything.
so fully scaled by your character. You go in as a tanky character, you'll be tanky in the dungeon, which is really cool. So
And then with
you've solved
Ultimatum,
that.
and just because people will ask, in Ultimatum there aren't any traps.
Yes.
So that's the
No
thing
traps
that
in Ultimatum
yeah.
and no honor system in Ultimatum. If
Correct.
you just want more of a pure
Yeah,
combat
correct. You can do
experience,
Ultimatum,
then that's your choice. And then there's going to be a third one as well, which
They will eventually.
is a secret for now.
So
but-
once Act 4 goes in, then we'll have a third trial. So people sort of broadly know that the crew are in Act 4. So it's the question of how would the crew ascend is the question there.
Yes, and if there's any other things that have been called trials associated with the crew at some point in the past, and how likely that is to be related.
I'm just thinking now, we're just thinking of that Val Thaumaturge class before, and I'm already thinking like, oh, it'd be so cool if you ascend in Ultimatum. We want the Trial Master to say different lines to you because you're like choosing the way of the Val. I can't stop thinking about all this
He's,
stuff.
I did hear a few of his lines in some of the gameplay Jonathan was showing me. It was quite good. I love that he's back, the Trial Master.
Yeah, he's cool.
Good. A little salty sometimes that you're taking this power, it seems. So we have the unique rewards from each of them. We got like the like you said, the jewels are global, but there are unique jewels, and then there are unique socketables from the other one.
Yep.
And is there something planned to be unique from the final third trial that will be added later?
Of course.
Yes, there is already.
Secret.
I know what I'm not going to say. Don't worry.
Okay, keep some secrets. Fine then.
Yeah. Again, I value the discovery, right? I'm certainly if I accidentally say it, it is certainly by mistake. But yes, don't.
And that Val orbs from the Ultimatum in particular they seem like they're a lot more important, a lot more powerful.
I mean, I certainly think that like some of the stuff is a lot better with how they work. So So one of the things that we wanted to change was that implicits on items are truly implicit. Like you can't get rid of them; they stay there. And so that means that when you do a Val orb, the mod that you get there now is an addition to whatever implicit already had, which is obviously good. And then the next one being that you can get plus 1 socket above the normal limit, which is also kind of powerful. So especially with the soul cores, so that in the Trial of Chaos, you get soul cores that you can't get from anywhere else, and those effectively are mods that are typically a bit beyond what you would normally get like on regular items. Whereas runes, which kind of drop everywhere, those ones are just kind of normal everyday mods that you would expect to find on any
Resists
kind of item.
and things
Yeah,
like
just
that.
resists and damage and that kind of stuff. So effectively, the soul cores is is kind of the more end gamey socketables that you might want to be using. And obviously being able to get plus 1 socket. I mean, it's something that everyone will want. But on the other hand, there is that risk of just bricking your item. So that's the deadly gamble you have as your final crafting step there.
It's they are Val orbs are more forgiving though.
They are, yeah.
But like if you think about we talked about enchantment. Yeah, so some slots you might value the enchantment over a rune or a socket slot, right? That probably, especially towards end game, I'd say that's probably going to tilt that way because maybe a soul core contests with it, but the whole point is that there's choice there involved.
Yeah.
And then there's enchantment. We just talked about the socket. There's obviously always the case of doing nothing, which happens. But for just say regular rare items, it will re-roll like 1 to 3 modifiers at random. Effectively, do a chaos orb on 1 to 3 modifiers, not all 6. And as much as that can often be a downside, because if you're using it on a very good item, obviously it's going to take away the good ones.
Interesting.
But if you're using it on a mid item, you can actually turn it very good. Now, I've had this happen. Like when I've been playing, I've got like, it's just, life, defense, double res, and something else that I don't want. And I'm like, I'll just start valing everything because why not? I've got my Val orbs and I Val it and it re-rolls that bottom mod into a tri-res. And now I got a tri-res double defense life helmet. And I was like, yo, awesome. So even that, which can often be perceived as a bad outcome, now isn't going to completely brick your item. And so, for example, if you have a weapon, you got your 3 damage mods, and you got some bad suffixes, it could even be an option, or hopefully it doesn't just remove all 3 damage mods, whereas before it's like if it bricked it often was almost always a brick, right? Like that item is now dead. So
And then you told me about a new unique result, which I don't know if you want to spoil or not.
The unique one.
100%.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's
yeah.
so cool.
I'm surprised you even got that one past Rishi, honestly.
I mean, he got it made.
Okay, great.
We discussed it. I agree. I agree. I messaged it to him thinking he'll be like, no way, this is unacceptable. But
Just
no,
tell,
he was all for it. Okay,
it
great.
didn't turn into a dexterity chat.
Yeah.
And so, what it effectively does is it just takes the mod values and it goes up to, I can't remember exactly the values, but let's just say
Said it was between
changes all the values to between 0.8 and 1.2 of what they were multiplied, but it doesn't care about the minimum and maximums. So, for example, if you had 1,000 life counts heart, you can use this to get, again, this is me assuming it's 20% variance, but because I can't remember what we balanced it to, but you'll be able to get a 1,200 life counts heart, for example. Now that's obviously giving up the enchantment and a socket. Just thinking about sockets on Calm's heart. I can't remember what we did, but whatever. I think you can actually do that, which is interesting. But ultimately, it's like, now I'm choosing, do I want the enchantment? Do I want an extra, 100 something, 200 life, whatever that ends up being? Or do I want the socket? So it's quite an interesting choice and adds an extra axis of corruption to unique items that is, I think...
Corrupted divining of uniques.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, effectively, it's divining them, but with higher
overcaps,
maximums
yeah.
and lower minimums.
Surely there's going to be some broken things like max res or something like that.
I
has an impact
mean,
on.
we'll guess we'll find out.
Cross that bridge when it comes to it. Yeah.
It's fine.
So that was all just talking about the trials, how you actually get your ascendancies. But what about the actual ascendancies themselves? How are they cooking?
Well, they're fun. They're cool.
Yeah.
We certainly tried to get what we've tried to do is for the class we've tried to have one that's a bit more out there.
Yeah.
Something that isn't just like if you think even about in PoE 1, you've got the duelist, and you can go like champion or slayer or holy words I don't remember, but you know the drill. And the gladiator. And the problem is like. Okay, they're all just about like hitting stuff with weapons, and they haven't. There's nothing really out there. Sure, they all sound cool. Like, don't get me wrong, and they can be cool, and they do have differences, but there's nothing that's like kind of crazy. So all of a sudden now, when you're like sorceress, you're using all your elemental skills, and now you can just like go into this thing that can stop time. It's a little bit more crazy, and you got the mercenary, and you can turn into a gemling legionnaire and like, effectively fuse gems into your flesh to like mutate yourself. It's like not just talking about crossbows and projectiles over and over and over and over again. It's like doing kind of whack stuff. So I really like that. That's awesome, and we're gonna
I noticed
make
that
sure every single class
when they
has
were
one thing that is like
covering them,
definitely out there.
that there's just
and
some
then one
pretty
thing that's,
crazy
more
new
predictable, more to the
ascendancies out
expectation
there.
of the trope. For example, the Deadeye to the Ranger, and but yeah, lots and lots of. Cool interactions, just cool playing with different mechanics, and we've tried to make them like, for example, none of them call out a weapon, right? None of them. So we're trying to make sure that they're broad enough to be that you might be a ranger going a Deadeye, but playing a caster, right?
Yeah.
Playing spells, like keeping all of that open, that flexibility, that kind of crazy, for the Johnny players, as we call it out there, who want to just completely experiment and figure out, the most broken, weird stuff. And you get things with that when you're still like, okay, I'm a ranger, and I'm using a quill rain in one weapon set, spec'd into a bunch of prod speed, attack speed, and in my second weapon set, I'm using a spellcaster staff with a bunch of projectile stuff, and I'm invested into more spell damage side, and you got a whack tree, and all of a sudden now you're this like Deadeye, Archer, Spellcaster, Mage hybrid doing all kinds of wacky stuff, or like even, or let's say the same build and experimenting with a bunch of triggers. And so you're using your bow as a Quill Rain as a high attack speed delivery mechanism for, laying down a bunch of either CCs or slows or building up crowd controls, and then you're using the caster stuff, and like you get some pretty out there things going on. And the important thing is it's not like just like benefiting only arrows or only bow attacks or anything like that. It's broad and now opens up the world to what you can do. And same like the Gemling Legionnaire on the mercenary is entirely just about gem slots, skills, support, etc. You don't have to be anything. You can be literally whatever build you want. And yeah, so that's embracing that and making sure that people still, even though we have all these classes, we're embracing that path of Exile. You can do anything fantasy that we want people to be able to do. And if you don't want to, go with the trope, perfectly fine. Yeah, and you'll still be powerful.
It sounds like you're really trying to avoid that thing that we've had a couple times in PoE 1 where like a certain niche is relegated to one ascendancy. Like that's the only way to go for it.
Sure.
But it sounds like that's not going to be the case here.
Well, at least if we're doing our job right, that should be the case. Yeah.
And with so many of the ascendancies as well. Got a lot of choices. Originally, the plan was to like have all of the PoE 1 ascendancies available, and it was some sort of weird split campaign stuff and all that. I don't really know at this point. It's a bit confusing. You mentioned Deadeye, though, so it sounds like some of them are coming forwards, but is it all just being
I think it's more
redone at this point?
At this point, At this point, they'll just be different, right? Like originally, way back when, we were planning on just keeping the ascendancies as they were and putting them over. But at this point, that wouldn't even be good enough because like it doesn't fit the kind of like Path of Exile 2 way of designing this thing. So I mean, look, we might have a class called the Deadeye, and it might have the same themes, but it'll be like different actual mechanics and different things.
I mean, even the Deadeye, you got Tailwind, works differently. You've still got an additional projectile. You know, like there are things that certainly carry over, but it's really easy, and it's honestly been fun just looking at them going like, you know, now we have all these system changes, all these skills, and everything works like this. Just what would the perfect class be? Not like how can we retrofit and band-aid a PoE 1 class to work. It's just way better to look at it and go, here's all the things we want. So, like when you only have now the life and mana flask and stuff, it could obviously things don't work quite the same. But then now you have the charm system, and all of a sudden, if
I
you
actually
did
do wonder
that,
if Pathfinder would be cool with that.
Exactly,
about stacking charms.
So it's just here are 12, eventually 36 classes. It's not really like here's the PoE 1 counterpart and they're identical kind of thing anymore, for sure. Too many things changed for that to even be possible anyway.
Yeah. All right. That sounds very epic. We can skip over the flasks and trinkets as we did cover that very well. So moving into skills, I realized I had many pages of questions here, and then I was like, wait, we haven't even talked about like skills here. so much for us to discover over the course of this beta. How has the list of skills been shaping up overall?
I mean, it's certainly getting there. I mean, look, there are even certain skills that won't even make it, even just within the classes we have. Like, there are still going to be some more skills coming later on as well for these classes, because there are more skills that we got just about there and didn't quite make it. And like getting a class finished in terms of the skills you need, like it sort of seems very easy when you come with, okay, we need 22, 23, 24, number of skills, something like that. And it seems like that's not so many, and you kind of design them. But when you actually come up with all of the things, the way they interact together, the number of prototypes you have to do that kind of don't really work, and you end up not being fun. And then, of course, the support gem stuff, like you need to make sure that every skill has enough viable supports so that you can actually even recommend people to be able to do. Then you need things like the passive tree support for all of them. You need to have all of the stuff with like the buff gems for each character class as well. You need to be thinking about uniques for the type of that can work with these things. It's just like there's so many different elements to actually make skills work, and once again, it's another area I think that was underestimated to some degree before, and it does take to actually get that finished, it takes a lot. That's been a total struggle, and we didn't think we would have to have only 6 character classes initially at the start of early access. We were thinking we would have 8 to begin with. But when it actually came down to actually getting to actually finish something, it just ended up being too much. Now obviously we've got a bunch of work on more of the classes that we've done. There's things there, but it's that finishing work of like making sure that all the systems in the game come together to support, how that works. That requires a lot.
Doing all of that as we're still discovering how we want those systems to work. Like the changes to support gems and all that. As we're also making support gems, as we're making character classes, just can cause things to slow down quite a bit, and then we have to recalibrate and all. It was an extreme amount of work that we certainly predicted poorly, but that was also because we are making all these cool systems to all these changes to all these systems, which are having like immense benefits as well. So,
for sure.
I would say it's pretty safe to expect that as much as you can't play them on day 0, some of those other classes that we have shown in the past, and some of the skills and stuff, there's a lot there, like just not to make it seem like it's shallow or anything, but we will be adding those classes in for sure.
Yeah, the thing that keeps like surprising me is, well, when you click that All Gems tab when you're doing an uncut, there's quite a lot of skills in there, but you initially kind of box yourself away where you think, okay, so I'm playing the mercenary, so I'm just looking at the crossbow skills. And then I was like, well, what if I go look at the elemental skills? And then I find Flame Wall, and I'm like, oh, I can shoot my projectiles through that. Okay, cool. I like that, but that's like surface level, because you also have the weapon swap thing, and that you can actually viably do with the automated weapon swapping. It's not like Toxic where you have to push the button a bunch of times, and you've got the trees that like customize whenever you do it automatically on the fly. So that's like all of a sudden I'm like, oh well, why can't I use a sword? On the other hand,
you absolutely
that's actually a very cool mercenary vibe, sword and crossbow.
So yeah, I mean that stuff is like is crazy. I mean, like in the actually there was one in the community guys recorded where they were using a bell, the bell skill with the quarterstaff with the rapid shot mercenary skill. And when I saw it, I was like, oh man, that's like a whole other thing. Yeah, like that I didn't even know about that particular combo until I saw it in the some of the footage they recorded. I started
thinking about that too with like multiplayer. And I was like, so I was throwing my gas grenades. Which you can blow up with your explosive grenades. But then I was throwing it at a boss that was doing burning ground, and they were blowing up instantly. I'm like, oh wait, so it reacts to the environment. Well, it's obviously going to react to my friends doing burning ground then.
Oh yes,
so and my flame wall friend.
And this is the reason. Like this conversation here is the reason why there's going to be crazy builds that we don't anticipate, because some of the stuff that can happen between classes, I just have no doubt we will not have discovered.
Like how much co-op have you really been able to test?
I mean, we do test party play all the time. Like Mark's like,
but to find all those,
I'm the support character player. Now I'm like freezing, armor breaking, putting down clouds, slow. I'm like, holy, there's just a lot going on all of a sudden. I'm not just standing there like I got buffs coming out of me. It's like you're like. I'm actually doing all this active support and like different conditions to synergize with the group, and how it's like, oh, okay, you're doing that skill. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do this and enhance my armor breaking and go ballistic armor breaking, and you just spam your thing that consumes it. So you get a lot of that stuff going on for sure. Where it's kind of honestly the terrifying part as well, where it's like. What do we have? We had the whole like vulnerability curse with gas cloud ticks or something, and it was like literally applying armor break like every frame, and so you have the monsters going ting 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 ting.
Armor explosion on there as well.
Yeah, and then you have some other thing, and you have some other guy consuming it, and again, oh my god, Quill Rain! Just don't even how many bloody synergistic things with Quill Rain.
You can do a lot with that.
All the lightning arrows on the ground, and because they can, lightning things hit them and explode, and all of a sudden now everyone's running around with Quill Rain, spamming lightning rods everywhere, and.
Yeah,
and Frostwall. Somehow Frostwall had about 15 abuse cases, and
I mean that's historically accurate.
Yeah, true.
Kinetic blast, Frostwalls, and all that. It returns. Sounds like it's coming back.
It'll be fun. Yeah, it's cool. Even finding all the stuff so far has been really fun. But yeah, I generally play multiplayer. Most of the alpha I've done is being in multiplayer. I play with other people. It's good to get a lot of that testing in there as well, because not a lot of others do it.
That's really good.
And then try and see what we can break, just for good fun. Honestly, the thing it's like hard is to then like, because you get this thing which is quite interesting where you have a staff is both a player and a developer, and I'm of the like, you better not keep that something that's I wouldn't say exploit, but something that's OP, a secret, right? You better bloody tell me, because
the exact reaction you had earlier.
You were saying people weren't telling you about their good builds.
You get a situation where someone doesn't want to tell you about their build, that's because they're like, oh, Mark will nerf it then.
Like you're supposed to be making games,
exactly.
not hiding your good builds.
I legitimately had a Monday meeting, and whatever. I was like, I swear, if I see any of you at the top of the ladder on day one, we're going to have a talk.
Exactly.
I know you've hidden something from me.
That's hilarious.
No, I did tell you about my flashbangs and how good.
But maybe it's fine. I just wanted them to check.
Well, that's the thing. No, that is the thing that is hard. No one knows if their thing is actually look, there's a line that gets crossed, yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't know. Is it just I've found something cool and it's powerful, or have I found something cool and it's broken? Those things. I mean, we have to make those decisions, of course. And a lot of the time, what is reported is just fine. and it's like, yeah, you got a good weapon, and you got this combo. You're strong.
If it's supported by items, then it's like fine to be very powerful. But if you're just like, I just pick these skills, and no matter what weapons I'm wearing, I'm just like completely ridiculous, then that's a different situation, because now it's just a thing that anyone can do at a moment's notice, rather than actually requiring like, I have to find this combo of items and things like that. So that's a much different story.
But no, we've had a lot of good testing, a lot of good feedback, a lot of good people reporting that stuff, especially in the last month. It's like coming in a lot, because as the systems and everything's kind of stabilizing, you start to get a lot more of that, and people are understanding what the difficulties meant to be and what the power of characters is meant to be. As all of that came and started to stabilize, we got a lot more of this coming in, and we are kind of getting more understanding. But again, you'll never find them all. But it's fun, good fun journey.
Support gems have changed a lot. How have you found the changes to them being now having no levels, and the restriction of having only one support gem on your character of a type, but having a lot more of them?
I really like how this works. Like, I think that it adds so much more build diversity and interest to have to be making the decision of like, where is this going to go? And the thing that's been important though with that system is it requires a lot more support gems to exist, because you only have one on your character. You need tons of them, and like you need a lot of different ways to increase damage and a lot of ways to support different mechanics. It's like if you're going to have something like freeze, if you're going to have a freezing skill, you need to be able to support that and augment that in like many different ways. And there needs to be more options than what you can even like. There needs to be, in order to have choice, you can't just have here's your 5 freeze things and that's all you do, right? There has to be more than that in order to be able to have it, so you actually have some choices as well. So that kind of stuff has meant that you just need a lot of things going on there. But I think that the choices that you end up with as a player of like, where do I put my model projectiles? Where do I put my PS? Where do I put, like, I think that leads to a lot more interesting decisions with how you build. And I think that to me is where a lot of why it just works so much better. And we were certainly hesitant about the whole, you can only have one support per character thing, because it sounds bad if you just hear about it as a player without actually playing it. Like your first reaction is you just hear that and you're like, oh, it's just a restriction. And it is arbitrary in some sense, right? There's no like, we can't justify it thematically, really. It just is what it is. And so I really don't like that kind of thing usually, because I want the theme to match the mechanic as much as possible. But in this case, it just made the gameplay so much better that it just had to happen. So it was
arguably, if you need to, like, if you end up in a situation where you I have to put the support on every slot.
Exactly, that is less choice, and that's the reason why the gameplay is
less
bad.
choice, less interest, and also you may as well just bake that now into the skills and or
100%. And so this is the thing: it is actually much worse to have that, because it results in this outcome. But like, that's a kind of more subtle argument that like you have to kind of make to people if you want to kind of convince them that this is actually the right way. Because when you tell people, oh, there's this restriction, it doesn't sound like what they're getting out of that is more choice. It sounds like they're getting less. But the reality is it is actually more choice, because you no longer have like mandatory, like here's the 5 mandatory things you have to put on the skill. It's like there's actually much more going on.
I think it's much better helped realize my experience on the Mercenary that your vision of having like all of these skills